Welcome to the Insurance Revolutionized podcast brought to you by Success Without Sacrifice. I am your host and coach, Cherie Sauer, and here on the podcast, we are on a mission to revolutionize the way women in insurance do business. We will be interviewing women who are changing the face of insurance, as well as giving you tips and inspiration to grow your agency to new heights without sacrificing what is most important to you. Let's get started. Welcome back to the Insurance Revolutionized podcast. I have Charity Elliott here with me today. Charity, thank you so much for showing up and being here today. We're going to be talking about the good, the bad, the ugly of running a business, an insurance agency, and also working with your spouse and work-life balance. So we have lots to talk about today. Charity, thank you so much for being here. Just tell our listeners a little bit about you, who you are, and where you're from.
Thank you for inviting. Well, I'm currently in South Carolina, but my husband and I started our business back in Florida. We've been in the insurance business for like over 7 years now. Out of the 7, I would say we've been working together about 4 or 5. We mainly work with ACA, which is under 65, through the federal marketplace. We actually got into that through a friend of ours who's been in the insurance industry for over 20 years. At the time, we were just working at a grocery store, and we kind of, felt like there was more in life, but we just what should we do? So that friend introduced Brandon to do with the insurance, and I went into banking, the banking life while he did that. While he was doing that, I noticed that me working in the corporate life, I was noticing he was working at home. He didn't have to go anywhere. He just, stayed in his pajamas and worked. And I was going to the bank trying to meet these sales goals. And I just hated the whole concept of working for somebody else when I was working so hard to meet these goals, and I wasn't really meeting, getting any kind of return back. And I was like, you know what, I'm gonna do this. I decided to tell Brandon, hey, I want to go in this with you, because I've been helping him with the paperwork and everything. So I was able to get up at 5:30 in the morning, do my course, and come home, work on paperwork for his insurance business. So I was doing that full time, just trying to get my insurance license. And then once I got that, when I quit my job, he decided to change his agency, which resulted in us losing our whole book of business. And we started from nothing, and we actually didn't have a paycheck for 3 or 4 months when we first started together. So that was a big stretch of faith for us. And once we got that, we noticed that our business really drastically increased, but it also changed the dynamic of our relationship, because I used to all right, going to work, I'll come back 8 hours later. Hello, how are you doing? And now it's we're constantly together. So, and a lot of times, a lot of people go, I don't know how you can do it. I'll kill him. And I'm like, well, I wouldn't kill him, but it's definitely interesting, and a lot of people go, well, you're successful in insurance because you guys are together. And I'm like, well, it has its challenges as well. And it's taken many years to even get to where we are, and still working on it.
Yeah. Okay. So many good things there that I'm curious to dive into. One, you talked about I'm reaching these goals for somebody else, but I'm not getting anywhere. And why do that for yourself? And I think that anybody listening to this can relate to that, right? That's why most people become business owners and entrepreneurs, is because we want to be in control of our own, success and destiny. So I love that. And then just the not having any income for 4 months, that sounds terrifying.
Yeah, we did not anticipate it at all. So, because, that was the one thing that was hard. We were kind of not newlyweds, but we were definitely, 2 or 3 years at that point. And he's like, oh, we got to pay off our debt. We got to do this and that before you leave your job. And I'm like, okay. So we paid off our debt and all this stuff. And And I was like, okay, can I leave now? And he's like, no, wait. So we waited. And then the moment we finally like, okay, let's do it. That's when he decides to leave and we had no income. And I was like, joke's on you. But so
So it
yeah.
only took you guys 4 months to be able to build up enough income to support yourselves, though?
Yes, because I left right before ACA started in November 1st. I left in October 3rd, and we had a whole 3 weeks to plan it out and start the year. But we don't start getting paid for what we did for that business until February or March. So that was pretty interesting to see, like, to do 2 months worth of business and wait 2 months to get paid.
Yeah, and we were
So,
talking about this a little bit before. Is we were just talking about this, that we were talking about with somebody else. Same kind of thing as in ACA, and you don't get paid for 60 days. And so you're putting in all this work and this effort and not seeing the results of that until down the road. And it's like, okay, it's coming, right? But that's hard. Like, people are used to doing work and getting paid, doing work and getting paid. So, and that's something unique about ACA from what I understand, right? As far as insurance goes.
what's unique about it?
Just with ACA being that long of a payout versus other lines of insurance get paid a little bit quicker.
Yeah, because a lot of insurance companies might offer a 6-month advance, and this one is like, no, it's January 1st is when their policy starts. They got to receive their premium first, and then we'll check the books to see who's agent of record, and then we pay you in February or March, depending on the carrier. So that was a very interesting pay structure coming from corporate bank, where I got paid every 2 weeks. So
I'm curious about that, just kind of the mindset shift with that, and what are some of the like challenges you experienced with that, and how did you kind of push past it?
I had to change my mindset because I'm a very, like, I got to have that money come in and for security reason. But I knew going into that season that this is, you just got to push through and understand that this is for a better lifestyle for you. It's a better way of life for me, because I was miserable in my bank job. I was getting the solid paycheck every single month, the health insurance and all that fun stuff, but I wasn't happy. So I knew that I had to push through that mindset. And then we had to budget, we couldn't frivolously spend. Do what you need to get what you need done, and, get through it, and I hate saying get through it, but it's a decision you have to make together, and you have to work together. And that's what Brandon and I had to do, my husband, because it was hard, not having that money coming in for a while there. And we had savings, so that helped a little bit. But, you don't plan on 4 months not getting paid.
Yeah, I've experienced this a little bit too, and especially both my husband and I, grew up in families where we didn't have a lot of money, and so that, like, safety and security and money. But I remember just being burnout in my sports medicine career, and I was like, I just can't do this anymore. I just can't. So I literally quit with, we didn't have a lot of savings. I didn't have a backup plan. I didn't know what I was going to do. I was looking into going into school, but that meant more debt, and I was still paying off student loans, and that whole thing. And it felt like a lot of pressure on my husband to, like, get a different job or get a raise and whatever. And, it was stressful, but I was like, I just know I can't carry on like this anymore. I just can't. I'm not going to survive if I keep going. And it's that, that's like taking that leap of faith. I always like to think about it I can't remember what book it is, but where God asked the people to carry the ark, and the water is like raging at super high, and they have to step into the water, and then the water parts, right? Yeah. The water part first. You have to take that, like, leap of faith. And so I think anybody listening to this that's hearing, if they're thinking about leaving, maybe being a captive agent and starting their own agency or anything like that, if you're feeling that, like, that discontent of, I just can't be here anymore, I'm not fulfilled, and it feels entirely scary, but at the end of the day, like, it always works out. And you figure it out and you make it work, and it's a lot of hard work on the other side too. But at the end of the day, like life is too short to live unfulfilled and to be exhausted and burnt out. So,
Mm-hmm.
Charity, I'm curious, now working with your husband, so you guys have been working together for 5 years, right?
Right.
What are some of the, like, what do you love about it? And what are some of the challenges that are a struggle of working with a spouse?
Okay, so I'll start with what I love. My husband is my best friend. So I thank God for that, because if he wasn't, then it would be super hard to do. We get to, since we have our own business, our own agency, we can just leave when we wanted to, like in the afternoon, like, hey, you want to go walk? Let's go walk. Um, that we were able to find that freedom that we couldn't have before when I was in the corporate job, or when we were working the grocery store. We were working hours, break like bone breaking hours to get a paycheck, and we were unhappy. And now that we are doing, stepping back, we got our own agency, we're just happier as people, because we're not having that pressure of like, aren't you at your place of where you need to be, or hey, at the grocery store, we never saw each other because we worked opposite shifts. So, and, so I love that, being able to be with him a lot more often, and being able to have that freedom to do what we want, and to be for family and things like that, because that was our priority. And the financial freedom outweighs so much more now. And it took 5 years to get to that point, but the financial freedom outweighs everything that we went through to get to this point. What I don't like is that we work from home. Our business is virtual, so we never leave the house sometimes. So one thing that we've struggled the most is not having the boundaries of knowing when to stop working. When your partner is your business partner, it's like nonstop. As soon as you wake up, as soon as you go to bed, we're talking about business, work, how to improve, and everything. And for the first 2 years, I was really into it. Like, yeah, grinding, let's do it. And then while I noticed that our marriage started taking a back burner, and I was just bawling a lot of times, because I was like, I don't know you as a person, as my husband. I know you as a business partner. And that was the hardest thing to get past, because we both had to learn to put boundaries in place of when to stop talking about it, and be more intentional about talking with each other and being with each other. That was the hardest one.
I'm curious, what do those boundaries look like now? Like, how do you guys, what are those? I'm curious to dive into like, what are those, how do you set those boundaries? What do they look like, just for other people that are listening? Because even if you're not a husband-wife team, this can happen,
Right.
Business owner and not knowing those boundaries, but then being a husband-wife team who you are together all the time, working together all the time. How do you create that separation? What do you guys do?
Oddly enough, I just met like a child of an agent who owns their own business, and they're like, I just don't like talking to them because that's all they can talk to me about. So it's like, it is a problem with everybody who's very passionate about this, right? I know I personally had to have my boundaries. Like, when I'm feeling very burned out about work, I have to say, hey, we need to stop. Can we talk about other things? We made it a thing where if we're on our phones for lunch and breakfast, fine. But at dinner, we put our phones down and we talk to each other. That was a big one for us. There was times where we had to set meetings to get it all out. And this is one of the things that we started doing recently, is just getting meetings and just like, hey, let's just get it all out. So, because, we can't keep just holding in, or keep just talking about it. And then sometimes we'll just go for walks just to say, hey, let's talk about it. Because we're just trying to be intentional about when to talk, when not to talk. And I know, and I'm being kind of funny, but one time on our bedroom door, I put work stops here, because I'm like, work does not talk about it in the bedroom. We just keep it out of there, because it's for other things, but and it shouldn't be about work. And that's what one boundary we had to put in place. And setting schedules, we're working on schedules right now. We noticed that we have different working hours that we like to work. I'm a very morning person, and he's a big night person. So he thought I should be working at night with him, and I am working in the morning. He should be working with me. So we had to figure out boundaries with that. I had to go like, hey, I'm working from 6:30 to 4 o'clock. If I stop at 4, there's a reason to it. You know, I've already worked my 8 to 10 hours already. And if you're working at night, I got to respect that, but just stop at a certain time so you can sleep. Um, so learning those boundaries, and then just one thing I've learned is just how it is important to have very honest conversations. Getting the person to sit down and just look at them in the eye and like, hey, look, I'm having a hard time right now. Can we put the business on the back burner and talk about us? You know, so it's just choosing those moments to just be just really open, because that's my thing. It's like if we overdo it, then I just burn out quickly.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, and that's I think common for a lot of entrepreneurs. I find more so even with women. I don't know that it's more so with women. Maybe women are just more open about talking about it. I think men experience it too. They're just not maybe as good as talking about it, and they're just better at like kind of trudging. But men are also very good at compartmentalizing.
yeah.
Women not so much. And so I find that it's a little bit more challenging for women in that sense. I love the note on the door of like work stops here.
Yeah.
And my husband and I are exactly opposite. So he's a morning person and I am more of like an afternoon and night person. So it took me a little bit to get moving in the morning, but I love that you guys figured that out about yourselves of like, we work differently and that's okay. And at the same time, I'm curious because you guys have like opposite schedules, and you were talking about opposite schedules in the grocery store. So now you almost have opposite schedules in your business. What does that look like, creating like intentional time for you guys to have together if you guys are working like almost opposite schedules?
We like the dinner. We definitely take time for dinner. Brandon has been like so much better. Like if I have like something I need to like offload, he does take his time to like stop now and to listen to me. And then we have been very intentional about taking Saturdays and Sundays off now, because we would work through the weekend. We would work at night, morning. We had no like sense of time. We were working. And now we took that step back to say, hey, this is our time to work on the house or be with each other. And now we're trying, we're really bad about it still. We're trying to do like once a month, get out of the house and do activities. So trying.
Yeah.
We're not perfect.
I mean, it's anything, right? It's a work in progress, and it's learning, recognizing it and just being aware of it. So then you can adjust.
One thing that we had to learn to overcome, and I know it really falls on women, is household responsibilities. And, you know, there was a time, dark time where, you know, Brandon did a lot of working and then he expected me to work just as same amount. And I'm like, but I have to do the cooking. I have to do the cleaning. I have to take the dog out, feed the dog. I have to go do the mail. I have to do the responsibilities. I have to go grocery shopping. And I had to like really like come out of my own shell, because I'm one of those people that if I see the job, I just go do it myself and I'll take all the burdens on myself. So I had to learn to ask for help from him. So we had to learn to start divvying up responsibilities within ourselves. And then also I had to start learning to be smarter with meal planning to help with my load, because one of those people that if I start working, I'll forget to eat and he doesn't eat either. So had to learn that. Divvying responsibilities and him not being afraid to just take on some of the responsibilities, because I was like trudging in all that responsibility and on the business side as well. So it was like I was working 24/7 almost. So
yeah, and that's what we see a lot with the clients that we work with and the women that we've worked with in the past is women just naturally take on household responsibilities. And you know, that's just how it used to be. Women managed the household, men worked. And so now as women have come into the workforce, that responsibility has still remained on women. And I don't think it's necessarily that I don't necessarily know that it's like a men expected. I think it's just what
Mm-hmm.
society, where we're at. And it
Yeah.
takes speaking up and saying, I need help and I can't do this all
Mm-hmm.
by myself. And usually when women get past the guilt and the people pleasing and the like, I
Mm-hmm.
do it, right? And they do ask for help, people step up and they help. And usually spouses, most of the time, spouses step up and help. Not always.
Not
That's
always, no.
that's a whole different topic. But women just take on this, like, I have to do it all and it's my responsibility. And then there gets to be resentment in the relationship too, right?
Yep.
Because then you're like, well, I'm doing it all and da 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 da. And that's something that I learned. Gosh, I don't even know. My kids were toddlers, but I just felt like I was like, oh, I have to do this and I have to do this and I have to do this. And then so I had a lot of resentment, but I was like, but I'm also not asking for help. So how can I be mad and resentful if I'm not even asking for what I need? And so
Mm-hmm.
I love this conversation because, sometimes women just need to hear and be empowered by listening to other people that you can ask for what you need. And if you are feeling miserable or resentful in your life, that you have to honor that and you have to take ownership of that and ask for your needs, because men are not going to know what you need. And that's where a lot of women end up of like, well, I don't want to have to ask. He should just know. Men do not know.
No.
They just don't know.
I learned that the hard way.
You huff and you puff and slam doors and like they don't get it. You have to lay it out for them very clearly.
Mm-hmm.
Of I need XYZ.
Right.
I need you to help with this. I need this, right? And get really clear. And that just it opens up the communication, and then it takes the resentment away. And
Mm-hmm.
It's this you did this and you didn't do this, so I love that you recognize that and you were like, I can't keep doing this. And that's usually the point people get, is I can't keep doing this. And so something has to change, whether that's asking a spouse or your kids or hiring and outsourcing, whatever that looks like. So
Right.
so yeah, I just want to say good for you for speaking up and asking, and good for your husband too, stepping in and
Mm-hmm.
taking that responsibility. But it does come to us as women to speak up and ask for our needs and not just expect people to know what we need. So
yeah, not to be scared. And I think that was my mental block, was like, oh, what if he says no, or he's never going to do it, or whatever the case may be. No, it's really just in communication and love, just ask for it. And my love language was act of service. So it's like, it was definitely a need for me. And so grateful for that to be kind of ironed out a little bit, so it's still work in progress, but I'm not going to expect him to do everything, so it's all
I'm
good.
curious, how has that one changed your guys' relationship, or how is it, it's evolving, obviously, how is it changing and improving your relationship? And also, how has it changed your energy?
I know for me, it's like a love language. It's a love language. So it made me feel loved and not alone in the process, because sometimes it's just easy for me to just feel alone and just not cared for and everything. But when he started stepping up in this little areas, like just emptying the dish rack for me, because I don't like doing it sometimes because I'm like always inundated with work. It just like, just makes me feel good. And it just wants me to reciprocate back. So it's, and it helps me with just that newfound energy to like step more up in the business or support him in other ways that's important to him, because we had different views about how the business should go. And now that I kind of stepped back a little bit, he's flourishing, and now I can support him a lot better in his vision. So.
And we talked about this a little bit, but you started a podcast recently. So tell us a little bit about that podcast, why you started it, and kind of where that came from.
So burnout is real. It happens, and I was very miserable. I just was getting to the point where I hated the insurance industry. I didn't want to be a part of it. I felt like, it's like I liked things about it and I wanted to be a part of it, but I just had no drive for it anymore, because I eat, live, breathe insurance work. And it was just so hard for me at the time. And we even had a discovery call and talked about it. I looked so miserable. And I think I love to read as a passion project. I love to read, and I wanted to discuss it and talk about it. So I started my own podcast in it. And that just helped me just bring some stuff alive and bring in new skills. That is also helped the insurance industry, but it's more in the areas that I really was enjoying a lot more than having to do sales and things like that. So it's like I'm bringing in the sales now, but it's just not like doing the sales. So
yeah, and I love that you talked about that, because I think as high achievers, we can get so stuck on the, like, I have to do this to get this. I have to do this to get this. If I don't do this, then I'm not going to get this. And sometimes when we let go and we release and we do something because we enjoy it, because we love it, because we're passionate about it, stuff can start to come. Like, your success a lot of times can flourish because you're flourishing. But if you're just stuck in the to-do and the mundane, and even if you're a business owner, right? Like, and that's what we find is people start in the first 2 years, they're like gung-ho about doing everything and everything's good and talking about it all the time until you hit this wall and you're like, I don't have a life. I don't even know what I love. I don't know what I love to do anymore. And so, I love that you had that connection of like, I'm doing this thing that's has nothing to do with insurance, but it's greatly impacting insurance, right? And making it more sustainable. And so for anybody that's listening to this, if you're feeling burnt out and you're feeling unmotivated or unfulfilled, that is a sign that it's time to take a look and figure out, like, what can I do to bring joy back into my life? What can I do to bring passion back into my life? And it can feel overwhelming to add something else onto your plate. And Charity, I'm sure that you can speak to that. Did it feel overwhelming to you to start the podcast because it was like, I don't have time? Or was it, I know you had talked about fear, kind of walk us through that a little bit.
Yeah, well, my first initial thought was I was a failure for wanting to pursue something different other than insurance, and that hit me really hard. It's so weird to say, because I felt like if you're not succeeding in insurance, then what are you doing in life, And I had to just get past that mental barrier of like, I have to do something for myself. I have to do something, because sometimes you can get caught up in the identity of something and you lose yourself in the process. So I did something I was very passionate about just to get kind of my spark back in myself, so I can go back to insurance and give that spark that I had. It's something that I didn't know at the time what I was doing, but then once I started getting into it and started realizing a lot of things started changing, and even Brandon, my husband, he started thriving more in his business once I started thriving in my little passion project, because he was energized by my energy of my happiness in that area. So it just started growing from there. And it has all happened after your discovery call too. So, yeah.
Yeah. It's always interesting to talk to people, because especially high achievers, and as women, again, we take on all of these responsibilities, and there's so much weight on us that we have to do all of these things that we don't have time to take care of ourselves. And the reality is, you don't not have time to take care of yourself. You cannot pour from an empty cup, whether that is into your marriage, into your children, or into your business. And people get so stuck on and this was me. This was me for a long time. I don't have time. I don't have time to do that. I don't have money to do that. Right. And at the end of the day, it comes down to just being intentional and setting your priorities. And unfortunately, a lot of times it takes people kind of hitting their breaking point before they get there. I always tell people, I'm like, I wish I could get people beforehand and get them to understand, like, if you can start taking care of yourself now before you hit that breaking point. But, a lot of us, we keep pushing to those goals, and we keep pushing until we can't push anymore. And the great thing is you can come back from it. So if you're listening to this and you are feeling burnt out and you're exhausted and you're unmotivated, know that there are changes that you can make, as Charity's talking about right now, that will, it doesn't have to last forever. It can change. You can start to get back to yourself. And Charity, I love that you found that in something as simple as a podcast and doing a podcast. And a podcast is a lot of work. But the reality is it's work that's fueling you. And you said it's giving you that spark back. And that's really, really, really important as a business owner, is to do stuff that you find joy in and that you love to do, and that gives you that spark, because you will be so much better for everybody else around you. So I love it. Congratulations. What is the name of your podcast?
It's the Booktrovert Reader podcast.
The Booktrovert? Like an introvert?
Yeah.
Love it. That's awesome.
Yeah.
I love it. And what are kind of like, do you have goals for that? Is it just, you're just doing it because it's fun?
I'm doing it fun, and then I'm doing it to connect with other authors, especially ones that are just about to publish their books. So I've been trying to connect with them, a lot of them lately. I just got just 3 or 4 interviews, and this is definitely like out of my comfort zone. But I'm really enjoying it because it kind of brought this confidence out of me. So it's just, that confidence is just translating to other areas of my life, just finding that little passion project, and you know, and it's helping our marriage too, just because I'm not a miserable person anymore. But yeah, sad to say, but
but that's reality, and that's what people, they get to that point where they're miserable and they're resentful, and you get in this like mindset of, I don't have time. Or even you talked about, like, I felt bad. What if I asked him to do the dishes so I could do this podcast interview, or whatever it is? And the reality is you are going to be so much better for it if you just ask for what you need. Even if it's a passion project, even if it's going to get your nails done, or whatever it is that you feel like you need as a person, because it's going to come back. The return on investment is huge, right? And I talk about the podcast episode on this, the return on investment of self-care. And self-care, when we talk about self-care, it's not just bubble baths and massages and getting your nails done, right? It's mental, emotional, physical, spiritual. It's what brings you peace, what gives you rest, what energizes you, what gives you joy. Because when you can focus on those things and you allow yourself that joy and that passion back in your life, everybody wins. And there is a huge return on investment. Also financially, right? Because if you, Charity, if you had continued down the path you were going, what would that have looked like if you didn't do something for yourself?
Well, I was at that point where I was like ready to quit. No joke. I was just ready. I'm like, done. I'm ready to go find a job to create that balance in ourselves now. Anything just to make it happen. I was checking out a lot. I was getting irritable a lot. So I knew, and I noticed that our marriage was kind of getting a little rocky as well, because I wasn't doing anything for myself anymore. And I thought I was like doing everything for this business and everything by just give. And I burned out because I wasn't giving to myself. And I think I probably would have not be having this conversation with you if I didn't like just be okay with stepping back for myself. Yeah. And that was the biggest lesson for me, because I just don't do things for myself. And it just made me overall a happier person that way. So.
I love, you just said, be okay with doing something for myself.
Yeah. Giving to yourself.
Yeah. Love it. Be okay with giving to yourself. Yes. I love it. Carrie, who I always love pulling like quotes out, but Carrie Soulier, who's also ACA, actually, she had said, you're your biggest asset and your biggest investment in your business. And it's 100% true. You are your business, essentially, right? If you are not functioning, your business is not functioning. So I love that
I feel in a marriage too, you guys, like the spouses feed off of each other. If one spouse is really having a downtime, really, really low and not striving, it's like it affects the other person. I noticed specifically for Brandon and I. So it affects each other without you realizing. until things are changed and you're fed up with your situation. That's when you notice how bad it was and how much it can improve.
Yeah. Yes. Such good conversation, Charity. I am so thankful that you have come on and just gotten really vulnerable and had these conversations, because these are conversations that women need to hear. This is why we have this podcast. And one of the reasons we focus on insurance, because you can make a significant amount of insurance, but you can also work yourself to death, right? And that's true in any business. That's true in any business. But what we love about insurance is people just have a heart to really help people and to make an impact, but you can't do that if you're not taking care of yourself. So, and I think even, you guys are a little bit unique because you're a husband-wife team, but even if you're a female agency owner listening to this and you're maybe hearing some things, that you're relating to maybe in your marriage, and you're like, oh yeah, that's kind of where we're at. Or maybe you're the business owner and you only know how to talk about business and it's hard for you to turn your brain off of business, right? So this doesn't just apply to people who are spouses that are working together. This can be showing up in your relationships as well. So I just hope that you hear us and you hear that it's okay to take care of yourself, and giving yourself that permission, knowing that it's going to profit everybody around you. Charity, are there any last things, maybe a tip you have for a husband-wife team that are maybe working together or just getting started? What's one thing that you would say you feel like is the most important?
Know your boundaries and have the conversations. I think those are the two ones, because if you don't know your boundaries, it's easy to be overstepped and you to get burned out. And if you're not having those open conversations of what you need, then it's just easy for you to get resentful and angry with your spouse because you're not opening that line of conversation.
Yeah. Yes, I love it. And then for anybody else that is in the insurance industry, just as a female, regardless of relationships or working with a spouse, what is one thing that a piece of advice that you would have for them?
I would say, oh boy, that's hard. It's okay to strive. It's okay to be ambitious. It's okay to definitely go for the things that you want in life. But don't take it as a sense of failure if you have to take your time for yourself. Don't take it as a sense of failure if you're going to prioritize something to you that's important to you that may not look like an insurance business or business itself, unless that is the most important thing to you. But if it's your kids, it's okay to prioritize your kids. If it's your spouse, it's if you want to go walking in the woods every day, be okay to make that as a priority, not as a failure.
Yes. Be okay to make that a priority, not a failure. One thing, Charity, we talked about before we started recording that I wanted to touch on before we wrapped up here that I forgot, is you had talked about when you're a husband-wife team, everybody looks at the husband as the decision maker. So dive into that a little bit for us and kind of what you've experienced with that.
So Brandon kind of took on the role as the researcher for our team. So he would make the schedule, the calls, if it's for a new product, if it's for a new software, whatever the case may be. But a lot of times, as they would just look to him and say, okay, what would you like to do? What was your decision? And only a few handful of times they're like, oh, the husband and wife team needs to be together on the call to make the decision. But a lot of times it's just like they just wanted to specifically get his decision on the situation or on the business and things like that. And there has been times, and it was addressed in the past, was it would sound like he was the only one that's building the business, successful in the business. And I'm like, dude, what about me? I'm the one who helped do your paperwork. I'm the one who suggested this. I'm the one who got a quarter of the sales, and that got me real angry because I felt like that I was being left out because what is it, those questions that pop up, what, because I'm a woman,
Right.
like, am I just the wallflower in the business? And I had to start standing up and start speaking out and start asking the questions. And I had to, like, I used to be the one that, yeah, I would be the wallflower. I would just sit back and let him do all the talking. But now I'm the one who talks, and I'm the one who also catches conversations and in question. And sometimes I'm bypassed a little bit, but it's just all about the authority that you have and you project. But yeah, that was kind of an interesting season to go through, when I felt like, it was just all about what he wanted to make, the decision he made, and how he spent the business money. And I'm like, no, it don't work like that. So
Yeah, it's interesting. I don't know if you've ever read, I don't remember if we ever talked about this, but the book The E-Myth,
oh yeah,
not women
even
specifically, but it's a really good book. And one, just to like create separation and like who does what in the business. But it is interesting when you have like somebody else come into the picture in charity. I'd mentioned this to you before, but I worked in sports medicine for 14 years, and I always looked really young. People always thought I was a student. And so we would go, to games, and there would be these older gentlemen that were on the other team. And I would come up with a male student, and they would address my male student as if he was the decision maker. And they would introduce themselves to him and like totally ignore me. And I would have to be like, actually, I am the athletic trainer. This is my student. And they would be like, oh, but it's
right.
like, don't assume that a male is the decision maker just because they look older or because they're in the room or whatever it is. But it's all teaching people. And but I get that, like that like fire inside of you of, no, just because
Right.
he's a male doesn't mean like he's the decision maker or the only decision maker. So I just thought that was really interesting, that you had put that as kind of like one of your pain points. I'm curious how often, so you guys have worked together for 5 years. How
Mhm.
often is that like a more the norm than not?
It's not as much as it used to, um, just because of the fact that I've been just kind of stepping up a lot more in that regards. I don't I try to work on just being more confident when I'm asking those questions, and like, hey, I noticed X, Y, and Z. So it shows that, hey, I'm just as important in the business. And I think Brandon was very respectful in me to start stepping back as well when he noticed that my strengths were coming out in the conversations. So it also takes your partner kind of like, I know this is just a weird situation, um, but it takes him just recognizing, hey, we just got to respect her as well.
Yeah.
So it doesn't happen as often anymore, just because of the fact that I took a lot of the admin role now instead of the salesy role. There has been a few times in insurance where they did like, oh, I want to talk to Brandon. And I'm like, I can help you too. I'm just as knowledgeable as he is. And that I get that a little bit more with clients than actually work professionals, oddly enough. They want to talk to a man concerning that, but I really had to, like, well, I can help you, I can find that information for you. And then I just keep talking instead of just letting them go, and instead of just handing the phone over, because I'm just like, I'm not putting up with that. That's, I'm just as knowledgeable as he is, and I was trained by him. So
Yeah. Like, I'm not backing down. Well, and that's what it
no,
comes to, right? Is making the choice and having the confidence not to back down, of like, no, I
yeah.
can help you. So yeah, I think as women, especially, we're trained to be nice,
Hmm.
uh, and like, oh, okay, we'll just let somebody else, if that's your request, then we're just okay with it and just let you do it. But but that doesn't mean that you have to roll over and let somebody do that. And it does just take being confident and stepping up and saying, no, I can do this, and I can help you equally as well. So anyway, I just love that talk, because I think that it happens more often than not, even today.
Hmm.
in today's society, as prevalent as women are in the workforce, but it still exists, just like any other discrimination and things like that exist. So any last words, Charity, that you want to say before we wrap up?
Any last words? I don't have much to say. I'm like a feedback person.
Yeah. No, that's okay. I just wanted to make sure. Anything else that came up as we wrapped up? Tell everyone where they can reach out to you if they want to connect with you, if they want to hear your podcast or anything like that. Tell us where we can reach you.
Oh boy. If you want to listen to my podcast, it is Booktrovert Reader Podcast. It's on Spotify, Apple. For our insurance business, we are insureboost.com. You can definitely find us on there. And then we are ACA Helping Ground on Facebook. We're helping a lot of ACA agents, and I'll make sure to get that to you if in case I say that wrong. We've been helping a lot of other ACA agents build up their business from the bottom up just because we've been there. So
that's awesome. I love it. How long have you guys been doing that?
We've been doing ACA for 7 years.
Oh no, sorry. How long have you had the group where you're helping agents?
Oh, we just started a few months ago.
Oh, awesome. Okay.
And we started building that up, and there's a lot of people are finding it helpful just because a lot of new rules are coming out, and it's just wild. So.
Awesome. I was going to say that, and I feel like I say this on every podcast and every interview that we do, but it's just always amazing to me how much, once insurance agents become successful, how much they're willing to like help and mentor other insurance agents come up. And I really love that. I think it's really amazing. And so, I think Carrie had actually like tagged us, and somehow we ended up in your group. And I was like, oh, wait a minute, they have a group. I saw Brandon's name on there, and I was like, oh. So that's awesome, because I know that's one of the things we had talked about is he really enjoyed mentoring people. So I love where you guys are at, and just how much growth you guys have had since we did our discovery call, maybe like a month ago. And I think that just goes to show that when you decide to become intentional and make the decisions to go where you want to go, it can happen. And it just takes being intentional and, again, taking care of yourself. So thank you so much, Charity, for being here today. It was such a pleasure. I enjoyed having this conversation with you. For all of those of you still listening, we have a mastermind coming up in October. It's a combination of one-on-one coaching and a group incubator where you get to talk with other female insurance agency owners. We're going to have some expert industry leaders that are going to be talking about different things. We have a retreat associated with it. So lots of different things going on. If you're interested in that, please check the show notes below and you can find out more about that. And you can also connect with us, Success Without Sacrifice, and Charity in the show notes as well. We will chat with all of you next week. Thank you so much for listening to the Insurance Revolutionized podcast today. We know there is a lot on your plate, so it means the world to us that you stopped in to give us a listen. We hope you will join us each week as we dive into topics such as mindset, goal setting, productivity, self-care, and so much more. We want to inspire more women to have success without sacrificing what is most important to them, and we need your help. If this podcast has inspired you, would you do us a favor? Would you take a minute to leave us a rating and a review or share with your friends? Let's change the face of insurance for women. Until next time.